About 6:10 is Congressman Brad Wenstrup of the 2nd Congressional District, somewhere in the Chillicothe area as we speak. And Congressman Wenstrup, I want to get your reaction when you first heard that the FBI had raided the compound of Donald J. Trump looking for pieces of paper.
Well, my first reaction was, you've got to be kidding me. And when is this going to stop? You know, I keep seeing one more egregious thing than after another. And, it just bothers me that so much that has been bothering me from the intelligence community, the lack of transparency. And right now with this, the DOJ and the FBI are showing that they're completely and intolerably weaponized. I can tell you, during the whole Russian collusion thing, when we had to go through paper after paper over at the Department of Justice where they were not cooperative with us, and we were finding out the things that were taking place within the Obama administration, within the agencies, Department of Justice and the FBI, and we were figuring these things out. I thought, as I walked out of the DOJ, I thought, who in here could I trust? And this is where we are today. This raid on the former president of the United States, are you kidding me? It's completely without precedent. And so on the House Intelligence Committee, we're going to demand that Christopher Wray come and explain himself to Congress. See, they forget that we have oversight over them. Yeah. The conversations we've been having with the intelligence community and the FBI of late is, we created your agency and we fund your agency and we have oversight over your agency. You don't have oversight over us. And I'm sick and tired of these agencies across the board, not just intelligence agencies, thinking they don't have to tell us things. Yeah. We are a country of the people. So we're going to demand some answers there. And certainly, if we can take back the House of Representatives, have those gavels in our hands, they know it's coming. Yeah. We've told them it's coming. But that, and even in spite of that, we see things like what happened last night. And this is transparency. We've got to have accountability. We've got to have. There's no trust in the FBI or the Department of Justice amongst the American people today. That starts with Attorney General Garland, and it just goes down the list. I put a statement out today, or I'm about to, that just discusses all this. His personal home, they go into without precedent in American history. And we don't know what the problem is. We don't know what the premise is. We don't know who the judge is. We're hearing things about who this judge is that said okay to this. But look, it has to get to a judge first. So what is it about? We need to know. America needs to know. Donald Trump deserves to know. And we've got some cleaning up to do. And I think America should be very angry with what happened. Even if they have legitimate reasons, this seems completely illegitimate and political.
Congressman, when I think about what's happened recently, we had in a baseball field practice a left-wing Hodgkinson activist watching Rachel Maddow and listening to the Democrats, who traveled from Illinois to hunt down the leadership of the Republican Party and shoot them. Stephen Scalise was shot. You probably saved his life. We have a circumstance a few weeks ago where another left-wing extremist flew from California to Washington, D.C. to find the home of Brett Kavanaugh, to murder and assassinate a Supreme Court justice because the left was not happy with the decision in the Dobbs case overturning Roe versus Wade. We have the Capitol that was invaded by rioters on January the 6th, about a year and a half ago, that went on for 3 or 4 hours. And now we have the presidential compound raided because of pieces of paper. So whether it's the House, whether it's the Senate, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's the presidency, the institutions that gird America through difficult times are collapsing. And is it a purposeful collapse by the left, or is it somehow unintentional? I look at Peter Navarro, a Trump advisor, who was charged with a misdemeanor, and he was perp walked off a plane, shackled, put in a D.C. jail overnight, strip searched, released the next day for a misdemeanor. I look at Paul Manafort and Steve Bannon and Roger Stone, all of whom had the Ninja Warriors show up at their home at 4 o'clock in the morning. A former acting associate Department of Justice attorney was brought out of his home at 5 o'clock in the morning in his underwear and not permitted to go back in. That's how the FBI treats Republicans. Now, if we have equal justice, that'd be fine. Equal justice. Well, equal justice is that Hillary Clinton's 35,000 missing emails that were bleached bit, whatever the hell that is, and hammered, had classified materials, and she was given complete cordial treatment by James Comey. You had FBI agents who admittedly lied on affidavits to get search warrants out of the FISA courts to eavesdrop on the Russian collusion delusion that the FBI knew when they started the investigation. It was all a bunch of crap. It was a dirty trick of Hillary Clinton that metastasized into the Robert Mueller investigation, resulting in nothing. Compare what happens when Democrats do similar things or worse things than Trump has done, not turning in some papers, as opposed to the way they treat Trump, Navarro, Manafort, Bannon, and Stone.
Well, there's no comparison because nothing happens to them. Apparently, Hillary Clinton lied under oath and destroyed subpoenaed evidence. Nothing. Hunter Biden's laptop. Lois Lerner and her targeting of conservative groups from the IRS. And now they're going to add 86,000 more IRS agents to do even more of that when they really should be hiring Border Patrol agents. You go back to the shooting at the baseball field. The FBI came out and said that that man just wanted suicide by cop. Well, all you got to do is pull a gun on a cop. There were 136 rounds fired that day. It took 4 years before we on the Intelligence Committee had Christopher Wray in front of us, and I confronted him with all the evidence and how they could come to such a poor conclusion, and he finally changed it to domestic violent extremism. Why did they want to call it suicide by cop? Because the man who came there was a Bernie Sanders man. He was from the left, and they didn't want to say that this man was a violent man motivated by someone on the left to come and try and kill Republicans and change the balance of power in the House of Representatives, which is an insurrection. And when they put together this January 6th commission, they were supposed to be about what went wrong and how do we protect ourselves better. And I offered an amendment to include what happened on June 14th, 2017 at the baseball field. I said, if we're truly interested in protecting the Capitol and the people who work here, then we should be looking at how we're postured when we come together like this and how we can do things better. Democrats voted that down on party lines. They didn't even want to talk about that. Because why? Because that was done by the left. It's got to stop, Bill. It has got to stop. America is being torn apart like we can't believe. Our agencies have too much control. You want to term limit people? We got to term limit people in these agencies that sit there for year after year. They become political. The military is supposed to be agnostic, right?
Yeah.
In the military, we have the Uniform Code of Military Justice. In our agencies, we don't. And so I don't know what their set of values are, what standards they try to live up to. But when they don't, there's no punishment. And so they've become very rogue. It's become very clear. And I think America should wake up and be concerned about that. And I certainly hope that they make a difference in November.
One can only imagine if while the Democrats were practicing for a baseball game, the congressional baseball game, some MAGA hat-wearing right-wing extremist hunted down Democratic lawmakers, robbed off, I think, about 20 or 30 shots, hit Stephen Scalise. I can imagine if one of the leaders of the House of Representatives, who was a Democrat, was hauled away in a helicopter because of a planned assassination by a Trump supporter, that issue would still be on the front page of the papers. But the Stephen Scalise situation happening 5 years ago quickly left the public consciousness because it didn't fit. I can also imagine if a MAGA hat-wearing Republican was hunting down maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg with guns intending to kill her, and he was found outside of her home, what the media would have done with that. And one can only imagine if when Trump took office, he weaponized the FBI to go after Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary Clinton, what would the media have done with a raid on the home of Barack Hussein Obama? What would have happened? Oh,
well, it would still be going on. But, when you go back to the shooting, Trent Kelly was one of the first people shot at, and the only reason it missed him because the third base gate was locked and it hit a link in the fence. But Trent Kelly and I both sit on Intelligence Committee, and we have not even been permitted to review the case file by the FBI. They said their legal advised them not to let us. I said, what legal authority do they have? We have oversight over you. Unfortunately, as Republicans, we don't have gavels to subpoena this file. And so we have told them, if we don't get to see the entire case file and how they got it so wrong to call it suicide by cop, then we will cut their funding. And we've already written that into the IAA coming out of the House of Representatives, which is the Intelligence Authorization Act. Keep in mind, it was Andrew McCabe who was in charge of the FBI on that date in 2017, and he was very much a part of the Russian collusion nonsense and FISA court abuse, etc. And so he did not want this to be called an attack or an assassination attempt from the left. And so these are the things that we still have yet to unearth, and it's 5 years later right now.
Congressman, I have a headline here. Judge who approved Mar-a-Lago raid represented Jeffrey Epstein's employees. His name is Magistrate Judge Bruce E. Reinhart, and he represented. Reinhart's resume includes quitting his job at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which was prosecuting crimes committed by Jeffrey Epstein. By the way, Jeffrey Epstein got the incredible sweetheart deal of a lifetime for having sex with children. Essentially, he had home incarceration, and that's it. And the judge that issued this search warrant was that person. And also, he represented people who worked for Jeffrey Epstein. So he was in government, gave Epstein the sweetheart deal of a lifetime, took his government hat off, then put on his private practice hat, and represented Jeffrey Epstein's employees against the government. And when that was concluded, he took off his private hat again and put on his magistrate hat and issued the search warrant. Doesn't that stink?
Yeah, well, maybe the list of Epstein's clients were in Mar-a-Lago, and maybe that's what they're trying to find.
Maybe it was O.J. Simpson's knife. Maybe. Are we dealing with? You're on the Intelligence Committee. As I understand it, in June, about 2 months ago, the Department of Justice investigators showed up at Mar-a-Lago by appointment, went over a lot of materials. They suggested that a padlock be put on a certain room where there was some materials to look at. And I watched Eric Trump last night with Sean Hannity talk about they took some things. We said, fine. My dad said, Eric, you take care of whatever they want. Give it to them. They came in, left, put on the padlock. And now we're told because of Maggie Haberstein, who's writing a book, New York Times, with pictures of something in a toilet, which came out 2 days ago. Now there's a coincidence to sell the book. Now the FBI is acting involving papers. Politically, what does this do? Because I thought the FBI and the Department of Justice did not do things during the election season. We start voting in Ohio, as you know, in about 8 weeks. This is the election season is underway. Campaigns or ads are being run. What does this do politically, if anything? Does it embolden the Trump nation, or does it make us feel depressed? I know my answer. What's yours?
Well, I hope the American people say we've had enough with people running a show like this, and that we're going to go out and vote for Republicans. I mean, just be frank with that. But I do want to say one other thing, too. I am convinced that within the DOJ and within the FBI, we have many people that go in with all the proper intentions of truth, justice, in the American way. And I think there's many that leave those jobs still adhering to those principles. But unfortunately, we have far too many that seem to be in control that have lost their way from what is actually what America is supposed to be about.
Now, lastly, Merrick Garland, this is his revenge. He was stung when Republicans would not give him a hearing in the Senate to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. He got this as a consolation gift, and since then, he answers no questions. When I've watched all the hearings, you've participated in them in the Senate. Portman, others have participated. I love what Rand Paul is doing in the Senate. And he answers no questions. He sees no evil, speaks no evil, and hears no evil whatsoever when it comes to Hunter Biden. They've had possession of his laptop from hell for 2.5 to 3 years. Nothing's come of that. In fact, the special prosecutor's got to be appointed to investigate the president's Joe Biden taking bribes indirectly through Hunter Biden. They're not even got to the point yet of appointing a special prosecutor. It doesn't even exist. And so here we have a president who's nearing 80 years old and is determining whether he wants to run or not, having papers in his office being ransacked, boxes taken out concerning lots of personal matters. I guess there'll be an inventory list, but I know you got to go. But I tell you what, I had no thought that I lived in a banana republic where the former president, the head of the opposition party, can be indicted by the ruling party and then put before a jury in Washington, D.C. to be found guilty or not guilty. Are you kidding me?
It's a very interesting time and a very scary time. We've got to continue to stand up for what's right every step of the way. Thank you for being a voice for that.
Brad Wenstrup, you're a great American. Good luck there in Chillicothe this afternoon. Good luck.